says something to me. Translator says, Baba wants to know whether you'll give it to him. And the guy that's lying on his belly jumps up and says, if you want it, Maharaji, you can have it. It's like, I've never been hustled so fast. But the thing that gave me such unease was that all those people were laughing at me. Because they, knowing him, he wouldn't take the car if I handed it to him. Because you can't even give him an apple. And so they know he's giving me the business. But I'm being taken in by the business. Very uneasy. So I said, well, I'm sure we can get a car for you like that. And then he said, come, come, come. Walking slowly. Now, I'm feeling strange. And he says, sit down right here. And he said, you were out under the stars last night. The night before, we had stopped at a house, and it had my bedroom on one side of the courtyard and the outhouse on the other side of the courtyard. And I had to run the courtyard in the middle of the night, and the stars were brilliant, and they were so close that they reminded me about my mother, who had died 6 months before. She felt very close. And then a passing thought, etc., and went back to bed. So now, and here's the day later, this guru said to me, you were out of the stars last night? Yeah. Most people are, you know. He said, you were thinking about your mother. Even the sophisticated cognitive psychologists that I know would never undertake that. He was reading my mind. And then I looked down at this ground, and it was like, if he knows that, oh my God, ooh, and I went, I had about 30 of them. These were people these were things that if people wouldn't love me if they knew this about me. 30 of them, and I was just, I was cataloging. And finally I stopped. And his head was right back there. And he was up there. And I looked in his eyes, and it was the first time I had ever seen unconditional love. He was loving. He was loving even with all that. And he showed me about unconditional love. From his heart to my heart. Like he says, love everybody. Here's one of his teachings. He started with me in the 70s. He said, Ramdas, tell the truth. Maharaji, I always tell the truth, which isn't the truth. That's on Monday. And then Tuesday, he calls me in and he says, Ramdas, love everybody. I do, Maharaji, I love everybody. Go. Wednesday, Ramdas, come in. Tell the truth. Next day, Ramdas, come in. Love everybody. He's going through that for every alternate day. And so I had built an animosity towards my Western fellow devotees. I was thinking what they were selfish, and they were getting in my way to Maharaji. And I was really, all of their idiosyncrasies bugged me. So, we were at a hotel nearby, and I was doing a little thing where I didn't touch money. And then I'd have a bag man, you know, my cello, he'd have a bag of my money. So I didn't touch money. So they all took the bus, but the bus cost money. And I couldn't have any of them get the satisfaction of being my bag man. So I couldn't take the bus. So I walked through the woods, and just as they're all eating food at the temple, and all sitting around Maharaji. I'm coming from above this whole thing. I'm mad. So one of the one of those devotees on Matterstadt brings me food. And I take it, the plate, and push it in his face. If you've never done that, it's incredible. It's really quite a... So, from across the courtyard, Maharaji, Ramdas, what's the trouble? I said, I hate them. He says, do you like me? Sure, but you're different. I hate them. I told you, I said, love everybody. Yes, but you told me to tell the truth, and the truth is I hate them. I was proud that I was being so truthful. And he came up nose to nose, and he said, I told you to tell the truth and love everybody. In that moment, it was like, it was like a change in personality. Because the truth is that that moment, I did love everybody. It came so hard for me because I got such a rush out of judging everybody. Can't love that one. Can't love that one. Well, he says, all of your family. All are gone. He's talking in different planes of reality. My sadhana, my spiritual path, is what's known as Guru Kripa, is the grace of the Guru. All I do is wait for grace. That's my path. And keep the Guru in mind. It's a path that falls under Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of the heart. I was with a chauffeur of one of Maharaji's devotees. And the devotee had loaned his car with the chauffeur to Maharaji to go somewhere. And the chauffeur said, we were in the jungle, and the car ran out of gas. And I got ready to walk the jungle. And Maharaji said, before you go, would you get me a water from that stream? I thought he wanted some water. I gave the glass to him, and he poured it in the gas tank. I said, Maharaji, the car won't run. And he poured and poured. And I was telling Krishnadas the story. And he said, well, I heard one that's, the car ran out of gas, but there wasn't any stream. I said, what did he do? He peed in the gas tank. Now, when we're in the world where fuel is certainly very, very close to our heart. Do you think that story is going to give the Mideast is going to get anxious? I tell those stories because he has a city's powers that he has that you and I don't have. He's a 1-3 in my category system. The way I understand his consciousness is that he has intimate knowledge of all of it, subjectively, not objectively. It's like you know how to make a fist. You subjectively, it's part of you. When I am with him, I feel like Charlie McCarthy with Edgar Bergen. he makes Charlie run. Charlie is a puppet, and I am a puppet of Maharaji. I show you that the first time I was in India, the yogi who was given assignment to make a yogi of me by Maharaji, the yogi came in and said, Maharaji gave his Ashirvad for your book. I said, what is Ashirvad? He said, blessing. I said, what book? I'm not writing a book. He must have some book somewhere. So he had a blessing about a book. So I went back to New York and I wrote a book. And 9 publishers turned it down. And I thought, that couldn't be the book. Because he's the publishers and he's publishing his own book, you know. So at that time, I was giving lectures at a sculptor's studio in New York. And there was a woman in the audience, a public stenographer, and she was taking notes in shorthand. And then she went home this was her sadhana. She typed them all up and they wrote this thing like that. And she came to me and she said, here are your words. I said, well, that's very nice. Put them in my trunk of my car. So I then, from New York to across the country to a retreat center out in California, Esalen. And the retreat center gave me a house to live in. This couple, and he was a gardener, and he had written a book and things like that. And he pulled my suitcase out of my trunk, and he said, what's that? So I told him of the woman, He said, well, like, take a look at that. And he took it into his office. And in the office, he outlined a few things, stories, that made up Be Here Now, brown pages, and the brown pages. And I went next to Lama Foundation to New Mexico, and Steve was taking out of my bag, and he said, what's that? And I said to him the story of it, and I'm going to take it in and look at it. Sure. This would be great pictorially represented. We have 5 artists here. Let's talk about it at dinner. And we had talked about it at dinner, and we set the art about the stories and the art, and, you know. And this was this book. And this book, what he gave his Ashrbad, this book was quote, the Bible of the hippiedom in the 60s. Every time that book is mentioned, the person says, oh, it's spiritual sustenance. Like I was a Buddhist yekta in Burma, and a monk came up. He says, you know, I'm here because of your book. And I was a Benedictine monastery. A priest came. I'm here because of your book. All the different, they each give their own, they wanted to go spiritually, and that book pushed them forward. And everybody says to me, you've done a wonderful thing, you've wrote that book. And I said, I didn't. He wrote it. I can feel that I'm being used. Mara, a friend of mine who's a doctor, became a devotee of Maharaji. And he said, you know, I wasn't astounded by the fact that Maharaji loved everybody. After all, he's a saint. But I was astounded that when I was sitting in front of Maharaji, I loved everybody. Heart to heart, heart to heart, heart to heart. The stroke, before I had the stroke, I had a feeling that that my life was graced because I knew Maharaji. And because he watched over me. So I was graced. And then came the stroke. And I was depressed about 2 months after the stroke. The depression, well, my body hurt. personality stuff, I was dependent, and you know, all the time I was prided myself about my independence, and I found myself having to call somebody to help me get up out of bed in the morning. Those physical pain and the psychological pain, those were tough as suffering goes. But the worst suffering was that the stroke indicated that I was not leading a graced life. Like, how did Maharaji, how did he let this happen? He must have gone out to lunch. That really depressed me. That I was out beyond his realm of blessing. So I sat in bed in the hospital. His grace, this stroke. You know, when I took at a stroke, I looked at it with eyes of this culture. I could, like everybody around me, the doctors, nurses, friends, relatives, all had the same mind. It's too bad you have the stroke. Oh, that's terrible. Terrible. And I was buying into it. Terrible. Terrible. So his grace and this terrible stroke, his grace. And I kept and then I found, came together, this and this. My God, could you? His grace has always been present. I don't feel his grace. And there's a certain subtle thing in this, because the Guru sends grace, showers grace, but whether you feel it or not depends on how much faith you have. And the stroke took away my faith. And so I didn't know I was showered. With grace. But could it be that the stroke is grace? could it be opening the door to new realms of spiritual growth for me? Because that is what grace does. It helps your soul get to the one. So how could this stroke help me, a soul, get to merge with the one? The stroke first kept me from speaking. Aphasia. And so I became a friend of silence. That the stroke did that. I spoke out of that aphasia, gave lectures. I spoke so slowly, even slower than I'm speaking now. And the audience said, "Oh, it's wonderful to speak that slowly." I can't, it was saying, I absorb the material. I feel the presence. The stroke is then I'd have to be the wheelchair. There's usually one or two people in an audience that wish not to be there. Maybe their wife brought them, or husband brought them, or they sing like this, you know. They don't want to hear anything about my stuff, you know, about my stuff. And and what I'm doing is people's hearts. I'm opening people's hearts. You can see their hearts are never open like this in my lectures. But now, the wheelchair, it opens their hearts. And then I can sneak in the other way. Spiritual people function on two levels. Number one and number two, or number one and Number three, it's described as, in the Quakers describe it as the still small voice of God within you. And it's called the Atman in Hinduism. If you identify with your awareness, then you're aware of your skin, you're aware your eyes see, you're aware of, usually think about what you're aware of. And you can't make your awareness into an object because it's something you be. You be your awareness. And then you start to go into that being, back in to being that awareness. Now, if you just think of the one, instead of calling it any other, we call it awareness. It's like we are fingers of awareness of the one. So you say, my awareness, that's looking at it from your ego. And if you go into your awareness back, and I into my awareness back, we end up with the same awareness. It's pretty far out. This is the mystical place that we don't acknowledge in ourselves. Meeting Maharaji said to me that we can have the possibility of living at that third plane. I saw one. Because most of us, that third plane information, we treat it as static. We might treat it as insight. how we get our insight. I've been working with compassion. You have compassion for another person. What you have done is you have become that other person. And you're compassionate for the combination. In other words, compassion is self-interest. I'd like to entertain questions or topics.
I also have a guru.
Hmm?
I also have a guru,
Yes? Congratulations.
and